So if you look in the Catechism in paragraph 386...
Sorry, Father. Why do we call priests Father?
So, why do we call priests Father? Yeah, it's a very strange thing that Catholics do. So, basically what we do is, the origin of why do we call priests Father, if you go back to the early church, the earliest records is they called people Papa, because this whole idea of spiritual fatherhood. But it's actually interesting because if you go through the history, it changes, that there were certain times where priests were called Sir. A lot of monks are called Dom. If you've ever seen the famous, I think it's the Champagne, Dom Perignon, named after a monk. Dom basically comes from the Latin Dominus, which means master. Around the time of the whole Reformation, priests were called Sir, and particularly in England, most priests were called Sir or Master or Doctor. It was really only because of trying to differentiate between the Anglican church clergy and the Catholic clergy that the Catholics became known as Father. So that's kind of the history of it.
But didn't Jesus say you can't say anyone or call anyone Father except your Father in heaven?
Yes.
Why you call them Father?
So in Matthew chapter 23, Jesus says, "Do not call anyone your father or master or teacher." Now, if you take that literally, you're not allowed to call your father father either. And you're not allowed to call your teacher teacher. In fact, if you call yourself Mr., Mr is derived from the word master. So if we're going to take that really literally, we've got to change the whole English language. So we'd basically assume that Jesus is actually using a figurative language here to really talk about the situation where people are taking on the role of father almost as like some sort of personality cult, you know, where they become the great guru leading everybody else. Whereas Jesus is really trying to say, you're allowed to be a father either literally or spiritually, as long as you recognize that you are under the fatherhood of God, not that you become the end point of the whole thing. So St. Paul says that he was father to the church. He talks of Titus as being his child. So many of the early saints spoke of that whole idea of spiritual fatherhood. So if St. Paul is wrong, then we're all wrong. But I think basically it is a strange thing that Catholics do, calling each other Father. But there's a whole spiritual understanding behind that whole idea, that it really is in line with Scripture.